Chapter 6, To Write a Civilization. How do you do, buddies?
Long time no see.
Long time no see.
Today we are going to start the most difficult challenge, which is writing Chinese characters. Are you ready? Let's take down this endgame boss. Regarding the writing of Chinese characters, let's first take a look at how it is taught in China for 6-year-old kids. I think this method is also suitable for non-native Chinese speakers. Let's take a look at the first grade Chinese language book. This is the first lesson, and if we continue to look further, we can see that the students start learning Chinese characters right from the very beginning. Did you notice that these characters are the individual characters we mentioned earlier? That's because these characters are the easiest to learn. The book introduces Chinese characters to students through poems or articles, like these ones. Continuing further, we come across pinyin. Just as we discussed before, pinyin is merely a tool for phonetic annotation, and for those whose native language is English or another European language, it has actually become a hindrance. Therefore, we choose to skip it. Then we move on to formally learning Chinese characters, poems, articles, grammar, and so on. By the end of the first grade, students can basically write in Chinese characters what they want to say. This is something written by my kid. What I want to say is that Chinese is actually very simple, whether it is spoken or written, because it allows for a lot of room for error correction. Even if there are many spelling mistakes or grammatical errors in a whole article, it still does not hinder people from accurately understanding the meaning you want to convey. Behold, and watch this.
大太面啊，两个主要兵请冲下龙下，千万不要给我违禁啊！
围巾会保护你的衣服。
可是会把我当脏做啊！
Well, considering that the whole world knows the United States' attitude toward foreign languages, the whole world knows the United States' proficiency in foreign languages, and to top it off, the whole world knows that the United States can't speak a lick of foreign languages. So, can the fact that this waiter understood this buddy's Chinese without any obstacles prove what I said earlier is correct? Okay, now let's take a look at the writing method of these characters. Watch closely. Each grid represents the writing space for a Chinese character, and the purpose of the grid is to help students practice writing the characters beautifully. And the red lines show the writing method of the character. For example, this character should be written like this according to the red lines. Is this as you expected, or did it match your imagination?
Well, it doesn't matter at all. Anyway, I've got zero imagination on these subjects.
Okay.
Whatever.
Next, let's learn the writing method. Please take a look. If we classify Chinese characters according to their writing method, there are basically these categories. 1. Similar to these ones. Most of the characters in this category are the individual characters. 2. Similar to these ones. This represents the majority of the compound characters. 3. Similar to these ones. The ones which have a semi-enclosed structure, quite similar to these. 4. Similar to these ones. The fences of these characters are all very clear. The general principle for writing all Chinese characters is to start by following. Attention! From top to bottom, left to right, outside to inside, then seal. This is something we must remember. However, there are also some small details and other rules that we will discuss later. For now, we can temporarily ignore them. Alright, let's look at the first category. We start from this one. Following the writing rules, we start from top to bottom, left to right. This means we need to start writing from the top and then from the left at roughly the same height. So now, we start from the top height, first write the one on the left, and then move to the right. At this point, let's pause for a moment. There's a question we need to address. Why did we divide the upper part into two parts for writing? Why not do it this way? Or why not do it like this? You, smart guy, answer the question.
Well, I think the wind is a bit strong today, which might be affecting my mental faculties. So, I've decided to take a break for now.
Again? Fine. Such a brilliant idea. Pay attention, this is the stroke chart we've introduced earlier. The strokes listed in this chart are the writing structures that we can decompose Chinese characters into when writing. In other words, when we write this character, we can decompose it into these parts. Then, following the writing rules, we write each stroke in order. Each stroke listed in the chart cannot be further decomposed and needs to be written continuously in one stroke.
I've noticed an issue. The strokes that this Chinese character breaks down into seem to be different from the ones in this chart. Are you sure they are the same strokes?
Well, it seems like the strong winds haven't affected your powers of observation. Yes, they do look a bit different, but they are the same. Remember our fourth chapter? Chinese characters have different fonts. It's just that some of them look a bit more different than others. We talked about this before, we called it a font issue. Now, does it seem similar? By the way, there's no standard for stroke thickness in handwritten Chinese characters. The variation in stroke thickness in Chinese characters is actually due to the way Chinese people have been writing for thousands of years. I mean, this. However, in the past century or so, the way Chinese people write have changed to this. So, don't get hung up on the variations in stroke thickness in these characters. Just like there are different fonts in English, some of which are quite distinct. Alright, let's get back to the strokes. These strokes are the smallest units that make up the structure of Chinese characters. So, according to our rules, from top to bottom, left to right, this is how it's written. After finishing these lines, we continue writing downwards following the same principle. From top to bottom, left to right. And this is how we continue writing until the last line, completing the character. Same for the other three characters. This is how we write these individual characters. Number 2. We start from this one. Let's find out the strokes first. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our old pal. Okay, the strokes for this character is identified. Following the writing rules, we should start from top to bottom, left to right. However, these characters are compound characters. Watch closely. We cannot write this character in this way by following the rules. We need to write each individual component according to the rules before moving on to the next component. That means we firstly write the left component following the rules, and then continue to write the right component according to the rules. So, this rule applies twice to compound characters. The first time is to establish the writing sequence for each individual character within the compound character, and then the rule is applied again when writing each individual character. For example, with this character, the rule is first applied to determine that you write the character on the left before the one on the right. Then, the rule is applied a second time when writing each individual character. Same for the other three characters. Number 3. These characters have a characteristic structure that resembles a fence surrounding the inner part, but it is not completely closed. According to the rule, we write following the standard strokes, like this. Same for the other three characters. Here, we have a small issue to take note of. It's that the writing rules for characters in this category are relatively complex because most of them can follow our rules, but there is still a portion that follows different rules. For example, this character. If we follow our rules, it should be written like this. In fact, many people, including myself, write this character this way in daily life. However, the correct way to write this character is like this. There are many such examples, and we will discuss this issue in more detail later. Of course, there will also be some writing patterns and rules. Now, the fourth category. The characteristic of these characters is that they also have an enclosing structure, and it is completely closed, enclosing the inner part completely. So one particular thing we need to pay special attention to is that the final rule of writing is then seal. We need to left the lowest stroke for sealing at last. We start from this one. Following the rules, from top to bottom, left to right, outside to inside, then seal. We start by writing the outer part, but we leave the last stroke for sealing, then the inner part, and finally sealing it. The sealing stroke is the last stroke, and the last stroke is always the bottom one for these characters. Same for the other three characters. This is called, from top to bottom, left to right, outside to inside, then seal. These are the general principles for writing Chinese characters. There are some small rules for specific situations, and I have quoted and translated relevant content from my child's Chinese language book. I will create a dedicated chapter later, adding these materials and some learning tools that I recommend to everyone. So, these are the writing rules. This is a general guideline for Chinese character writing. It's not very precise, but it's highly efficient and practical. However, Chinese people are not always following these rules in daily life, but it doesn't really matter. After all, these writing rules are for improving writing efficiency. I mean, if you can write more efficiently using other methods, why not? If you need to verify if your writing method is correct or not, you can compare it online. You can search for information about Chinese character stroke orders on Google, where you will find many websites that allow you to view Chinese character stroke orders online. Alternatively, you can go to GitHub to search for some open source tools, such as applications and mobile apps. I found this web page on GitHub for looking up Chinese character stroke orders, and it's really great. No ads, no viruses, and it's simple and practical. I recommend you bookmark it. Alright, this is how we write Chinese characters. So far, our 2 hours are almost up. In the next chapter, let's take some time to study and discuss some of the issues and topics we mentioned earlier as the wrap-up session for our course. See you in the next episode, buddies.